Good day, everyone. My name is Joshua Fontaine, and today we will be doing a presentation on basically at least three topics that we've discussed in the past several weeks when it comes to ITEC640. Today's agenda is going to be over project management methods, stakeholders, and conflict resolution. So first, let's talk about project management methods. So in the course that we had throughout the several weeks, we had more than just three, but for this presentation today, we'll just go over three of them. First, we'll go over the waterfall method. So basically what the waterfall method is, in short, is a method that's done in a linear fashion. Basically, when a team completes one phase of that actual method, they cannot go forward until the previous phase is done completely. The only downside of this is the fact that you may have mistakes in the past that you can't go back. And towards the end of the actual project being done, you may have mistakes that you can't correct. So this can be very problematic when you are trying to get a project done and you have a particular time crunch to meet. Then we have the agile method. Now the agile method is different because it was basically a solution to the waterfall method as far as the mistakes of us not being able to go back and correct mistakes. So in this method, you do work in small stages. And in addition to that, while you're working in those small stages of the actual project, you have the ability to do testing as well and also go back and to make sure that your testing is can actually adhere to the agenda that is met for the project, thus resulting in less mistakes and less setbacks in the actual project. Finally, we have the Scrum method. The Scrum method is another form of the Agile method, but with this method, you work in shorter cycles. They're also known as sprints, and these cycles last between 1 to 2 weeks so far. But overall, these are just three examples of different project management methods. There are plenty more. So as of right now, how does everyone feel about project management? What are your questions so far?
Oh yeah,
I
I
like,
mean, oh you can go first.
yeah, no, I was saying like I like the agile method. The one like you can go back and test it and fix it and then go to the next one. I think the first one is like for the people who has like expertise and they know what they're doing. So they can just like if they have a short time, like just boom, go to the next one, go to the next one. They don't have to worry about making a mistake because they already have experience.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I feel like the agile method is like much better for sort of like software development just because of like the cycle of the agile method where basically, like you plan, develop, and then you test, deliver, and it like happens all within that sprint or like within maybe two sprints kind of thing, where like the waterfall is like, you plan and then you do all the development for the entire project and then once you deliver it, that's like when the customer gets it. So I feel like, maybe that's better for something that's not really software, more something like, actually building something like physically, like, building like an actual building. I feel like,
Yeah.
You need to do like real planning beforehand and you need to really stick to it. You can't just say, oh, what if we just like, change this room on the very bottom as we're already on the third floor? Then the whole building will
Exactly.
fall apart. But yeah, no, like in software, you can, maybe the first thing that you made uh, a year down the road is not really that good anymore, even though the project's not done. You can go back and you can refactor it. That's kind of what it's built for. But so yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm definitely all for the agile method.
I agree too, although Scrum method is probably an interesting method if the team has a lot of experience and are used to dealing with the same issues. I could see Scrum method being used, for impatient bosses essentially that want solutions pretty quick and, they know that the project team has been around for a long time and can do that, especially in the beginning when they need to show some progress of what are some ideas in the early planning stages. Can they start with one method and then move to another method in the middle of it, or no?
Well, within the waterfall method, that's something that, like I said before, you have to start, you start one phase, and then once you do that phase, once that phase is completely done, you have to move on to the next phase. If you're in the waterfall method, you have to basically stick to it. So that's why a lot of people nowadays tend to go towards the agile method, because you do get the benefit of the waterfall method because you are moving forward, but at the same time, you have the ability to go back and test things out. So. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the next part of the agenda. Any questions so far?
I'm good.
Okay, great. So next, we're going to talk about stakeholders. So basically, overall, what a stakeholder is an individual, organization, or a group that takes an active interest in the project and activities of a potential impacts and deliverables. So in other words, if you are a stakeholder, you have something to lose or something to gain from the actual project. Stakeholders overall are people and organizations that really you have to take their opinion, their thoughts, and what they see and their visions seriously, because at the end of the day, we're dealing with stakeholders that are investing their time and their money. And stakeholders are also investors. And of course, anytime you invest your money, you don't want to lose it. You definitely want to, like, at least make 10% or 20% or whatever you want to make on it. So that way, your money is growing. But in the scenario, in the world of project management, you have basically two types of stakeholders. You have internal stakeholders. The internal stakeholders are basically the project sponsor, the project investor, and the project manager. You have internal stakeholders. Internal stakeholders are usually the vendors, supplier, subcontractors, and the customer. But as you see, both of them, even the internal and external, they have invested time into the actual company. They're invested money. They're trying to make money from the company one way or another, whether it be direct payments or payments later on down the line. So again, when it comes to being a stakeholder, you have to realize that you are taking a risk no matter what you do, right? But even if you're working with a stakeholder, you have to respect that stakeholder's point of view, because again, they are taking a risk. They are taking a leap of faith. And in addition to that, if you are working with stakeholders, you want to keep one thing in mind, is the fact that your reputation can be on the line. If a stakeholder feels that, oh, this project is failing, this project is out of date, this project is not really being kept up to speed, that can really affect your reputation as a business, as a project manager, and that can ruin your reputation. We all know how social media is. We all know about a Google review. We all know about people going on Facebook rants and saying things like, oh, I worked with this person and they were trash, basically. But, you definitely want to keep your reputation in good faith with the stakeholders. Like I said before, those people, those individuals, those men and women are investing their money and they're taking a risk. So you definitely want to present them with the best, trustworthiness, the best products, the best just overall confidence in being a stakeholder. So far, what are your questions about stakeholders?
I think your presentation on stakeholders was wonderful. Definitely everybody who has a stake in it is a stakeholder. Your, financial piece, you have the managers that approve it, you have the resource people, you have the customers that might use the system, you have the employees that might use the system. Everybody has a different experience they're looking for in the project, basically. So it's one of the most essential parts of planning a project, is to make sure that the stakeholders are all heard and that they understand what the project is supposed to do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that was really well put. I was actually going to ask, do you have like an example of like stakeholders on a project? Just like so we could better understand it.
An example would be um if I had a company, like an IT company, and I had to hire a subcontractor to dig. I don't know if you guys are familiar. Like, so in the Army, we have different MOSs. One MOS is called 25 Lima. So that MOS is basically, they're called like cable diggers, whatever. They basically dig cables inside the ground, so that way we can run uh, uh, secret internet or just regular unclassified internet. So that would be one stakeholder, like an actual company saying, okay, we're going to invest money in your company and we're going to do this project for you because we're a subcontractor, right? That's one example. Of course, another example would be like, a Walmart employee. A long time ago, when I was a teenager, I used to work at Walmart, and so like I was an employee, but like I could invest into the company as a stakeholder. I forget the amount of the percent was. I think it was probably less than like 2% or whatever it was. But those are examples of like stakeholders. Basically, you're investing your time, you're investing your money, and you want to make sure that you're getting your dividends, the benefits of it. Again, as a stakeholder, whether you're are an employee or a subcontractor, you want to make sure that your time and money that you spent in the actual business works out for you overall. So,
Thank you.
yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, no, you talk about, how the social media and how the surveys and stuff like that. I work in Dick's Sporting Goods, retail. So every day for me, external stakeholder is my customers. So I have to make sure they have a great customer service. They find what they're looking for. If we don't have it in a store, I order online for them, or they can go pick up from another location. So we value customer survey like all the time. Every morning when I come, I'll look at my numbers, what we made, what we didn't make, and then I look at for my customer survey, like what they say about yesterday. It was a great day or stuff. And our percentage, it goes not only for how much money we make, also your customers, their survey. So the survey is like really important for us. So yeah,
Right.
the external for my customer is, they're my stakeholders. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. So let's go ahead and move on to the next part of the agenda. So we have conflict resolution. So in any project that you do, you may have a conflict. Conflicts can happen anytime. The thing about a conflict, they can be resolved pretty quickly with no hard feelings, or they can last for a long period of time. And as a result, people can fail at this project, or at least not get what they want to done correctly. So right here, I have listed are some of the techniques to resolve a conflict. First, you have confronting. That's basically solving the actual problem. You want to make sure that you're solving the actual problem. You don't want to take anything personal, because you don't know what's going on in that other person's life, right? So you may hit some type of sensitive waters right there. So just be aware that you're trying to solve the actual real problem, not any type of personal attack. Then you have compromising. Compromising is basically bringing solutions to both parties that they can agree on to a certain degree. We may not actually, be 100%, happy about this actual solution, but at least we're compromising, and at least we're bringing the tensions down between coworkers or employees or different managers. Then you have avoiding slash withdrawal. That's basically not addressing the problem. This is where, like, when you don't address the problem, you're trying to avoid it. A lot of times those things can fester, and you may, God forbid, you may have a resentment against that person you're working with. And that's going to make a really bad hostile work environment. Then you have smoothing, or also known as collaborating. That's basically coming to an agreement, rather than just your differences of opinions, right? It's similar to compromising, but with collaborating, you're taking both what you see and you're bringing it together. And then you have flourishing slash accommodating. That's when one person's point of view, that's when their point of view is overshadowing someone else's. So kind of like, I don't want to say it's kind of like bullying, but in a way it's kind of like, I'm more alpha than you, so therefore you're going to listen to what I say, and then the other person kind of backs down because they may be more passive. But that's how conflict resolution is as far as some of the techniques. Does anybody have any questions or feedback about conflict resolution?
Yeah, I
Um,
definitely think conflict resolution is like super important. I feel like it's kind of like one of the soft skills, honestly, of sort of like our last discussion this past week. I feel like a really good leader is somebody who's really good at conflict resolution, sort of like, smoothing out the situation and just like moving forward so that the project can continue. I'd like a better pace.
Right.
yeah, my workplace, we like 200 employee, let's say like maybe 5 manager, each manager has a department and each department has employee, right? So certain manager, they avoid the conflict, or the employee don't want to complain about the coworker, and they say like,
Mhm.
oh, because they think if they complain, it's gonna go back to them.
Yeah.
I remember one of my co-worker manager I was working with, we had an issue with my previous store manager, and I was like, look, let's say something about the store manager, because we felt like it was too much for us just doing it and him not doing anything about it. And
Mhm.
then one of my coworkers, she was like, oh, well, if you call the HR or if you complain, it's gonna go back to you. It's gonna say, oh, um, I I go by Zizi. So they was gonna say, oh, Zizi said it. And I was like, well, if we don't say something about it, if we don't say something about it, it's gonna be too much for us. So
Yeah.
finally, I moved it to another location, luckily, but she ended up with that store manager. And then after 2 years, that store manager got fired, because
Wow.
he was not doing, yeah. So it's good to fix the problem right away instead of saying like, I'm gonna avoid it because I don't want to get in trouble or I don't want to
Yeah.
hurt somebody else's feeling. It's gonna be too much for you. So I think like I rather confront it, fix it. If there's a problem, let's fix it right away. Or yeah, that's just me. I don't like
Yeah.
to wait conflict.
Exactly. Okay.
Exactly, guys. I mean, I have a situation as working as an instructor at a college. There's conflict. There's going to be conflict, especially when you're in a division where it's all women. Sorry,
Yeah.
it's kind of one of those, there's each of us has our own opinion, our own wants to do things. You get to a point where you're comfortable, and then, you know, there's always going to be someone not happy. For every person that's happy, there's somebody that's not going to be happy. So how do we resolve that? We try to talk it out and work together.
Yeah.
Basically, it's the biggest thing. We try to, most of the time we're able to resolve it ourselves and just, I mean, the latest thing was that apparently there was a complaint that I'm too talkative when I come into the door. It's like, wow, saying good morning to people is too talkative. Okay. And I had to have a talk with somebody, let them know, well, I apologize that if I disturb you, but usually I'm on my own side of the room, of my office area talking to my colleague. And if I'm too loud, let me know because I'm deaf in one ear and I wear a hearing aid in the other. So I honestly don't always realize how loud I can be.
Yeah.
And so just that little bit of knowledge lets them know that, hey, rather than complaining to our boss, come to me.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't even imagine, because there are times where their side of the offices are loud too. So
Yeah.
it's just hilarious. It's like, how do you resolve it? Do we always need a manager to get involved, or is it a simple issue?
Yeah, exactly. I agree. Oh, goodness gracious. My fault. My apologies. So thank you all for coming. I appreciate the participation and the great talks. Do you guys have any questions about anything?
Nope, all
No,
good.
Thank you.
thank you for having us.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you. All right, thank you. All right.
See you in a
Those,
moment.
those are my references. Okay. All right.